Well, hello there, Centered Path people. This is Reverend Sean. We're going to talk about a little bit more on the secular Buddhist frontier, which I just saw a video and read some stuff on an Australian group of secular Buddhists, and a man, Winton Higgins, who had interviewed not only Stephen Batchelor, but also has some of his own ideas about how secularism is meeting traditional Buddhism. I thought it was really interesting. And we're starting to see more and more Westerners embrace Buddhism, but in a secular way. But there's a few caveats, or like he says, really, there's these four frontiers, which we'd have to watch out for. And I think they're really brilliant and worth contemplating in this process. Now, the first one is basically to really look at, and this is our meditation practice too, and our contemplation practice when we're doing this work and we're studying Buddhism, is to let go, right? Is one of the things we want to do. And that's not a dogmatic or any weird religious or traditional kind of thing. This is ubiquitous in Buddhist training and practice. And the first one, restore and interpret traditional Buddhism in terms of the Western ethic. He basically says like ethical people would embrace, right? So that we can reframe the teachings of Buddhism in a more modern way. I like that, but there is value in the traditions, of course, and there's always value in the trainings and the teachings without getting into mysticism and without getting into necessarily magic and uh, uh, celestial beings and that kind of thing. Those are really good metaphors and allegories. And that's very important for the psychology of people to understand the way things are. For example, when we talk about the ways we used to understand things and the way we understand things now, we all understand what thunder is, right? So go back a couple thousand years, people were afraid of thunder. So what did the elders usually say to children? You know, when thunderstorms happen, they say, "Oh, God's bowling," or something like that. And think back to maybe the Norse religions when they would say, "Well, that's Thor, the god of thunder, who's fighting the ice giants so they don't come and attack us." And then people would say, "Well, I've never seen an ice giant." I say, exactly. That's why we have to do these practices and make these offerings for Thor so he can continue to fight the ice giants. They didn't know it was the changes of temperature and pressures in the air and the collapse of those pressures, which causes sound waves, which were the thunder after a lightning strike. So we didn't have the understanding. And this is important to realize and to conceptualize. It's the same thing as thinking of electricity as a stream. Okay, it has some of the same concepts, but it is not the same. Or, as Alan Watts had said, seeing a balloon and putting white dots on it and seeing that as the universe, and as the balloon expands, the universe is expanding. That's how we understand it. Now, it isn't like that, really, but it's a way to simplify it in our minds and conceptualize it in a little more tangible way. So the four frontiers that this Winston Higgins goes over, I thought were quite right on the point with them, and I want to expand upon those and use that as a format for doing your own study. The first one is to avoid. So we're having some light issues here. Is to avoid that predisposed atheistic hostility towards a religious process. So this is a very common thing I see many times, because people will immediately think of Buddhism and they go like, well, I don't want to study it if it has a leader and if it has, deities, and if it has if they make me bow and they make me prostrate and they make me make offerings and they make me blah 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 blah. So if you really look at Buddhism, there are no thou shalts anywhere in Buddhism. So there's things you do in honor of, and those are a practice. Those are a mindful practice of honoring, and a mindful practice of of perpetuating a practice that helps us to refine our own minds. That's what it's for. Whether it's prostrations, bows, they're the same thing. Prostrations, offerings, dana, any of that kind of stuff is a practice on our end. It's not given to us on the outside. It is something that has worked in the past. We have to understand that religion is a really a vital part of the human psyche and community. So if you look at any church, if you're a Buddhist now and you're a practicing Buddhist in any way, shape, or form, your community is minuscule. It is very tiny, and people are trying to portray big problems onto these small community groups. Now you may have 15 people or 10 people. That'd be a pretty big group these days, but you may have 10 or 20 people in your group, and someone inevitably wants to bring in issues of modern day politics and gender studies and race issues when you may have a completely homogenous group, or you may have a completely diverse group, which either way doesn't matter. Okay, so if you go to a group and they're wanting to bring these things forward, it's good as a small practice, but should not be the main practice. It should be going after the reasons, the causes, and the solving of suffering, which is the entire basis of Buddhism. It's really about stress, if you think about it. So the that being upset at the religion because it's a religion, and then having an argument whether it's a religion or a philosophy or a spiritual path. In the beginning, it's going to be a religion because it's a framework of things to get you to work towards a goal. Later, it becomes more of a philosophy because you start learning about it and you think about it. And now you have better questions because you followed the processes. And then it becomes a spiritual practice because you own it. That's how that really works. So it's okay to have it as a religious aspect and a religious practice early on, even later on, because you see monks that have been monks for 50, 60 years, and they're still doing the initial prostrations when they enter a temple. They're still giving alms and giving honorariums and these kind of things, and looking, and accepting alms offerings, even though they're completely satisfied and fine and don't have to worry about it. But it's part of the process. It's part of the process to allow someone else to give, and also to learn to take with humility. This is where we have to get. We have to break away from this idea of traditional nonsense and go into this other thing. So that's the first one. The second one is the importance of the acceptance of humility and morality. So this is something that people try to do in New Buddhism. I don't even know what to call it. I don't like calling it secular Buddhism because that's really what it is many times it's a bunch of people trying to find the loopholes to get out of doing X, Y, and Z because it's religious, and then trying to get away with doing A, B, and C because it's what they want to do, whether that's taking drugs or drinking or what have you. It's any of those kind of things. People are constantly looking for an out to avoid the actual practice. So when we see things like one of the precepts, which is to abstain from intoxicating elements, basically. Okay, they're like, well, is it okay if I drink a little? Well, okay, you know what? This is your practice. It's not something that we're going to judge you on, and we shouldn't be judging you on. It's your practice, and you need to understand and decide. It's about understanding and the development of wisdom in order to apply those. Okay, the third one on his list is the necessity to embrace the sense of the sublime, the amazingness of that child mind, that openness to possibility, and the ability of you to see beauty and the universe in everything that you come in contact with. That's the interdependence, right? So we're interdependent, and that's the ability to see and understand deeply change, impermanence, and interconnectedness. There we go. So those are not religious concepts, right? They can be, and they are often in certain ways. So, but we need to transcend that and go into a more logical sense without getting, for lack of a better term, butthurt and triggered by those kind of things. The fourth one here is to work on our intensity and authenticity of practice. And what does that mean? That goes all the way back to the beginning where we're talking about the religious aspects. So we're doing the rote and step-by-step procedures and ceremonial things which help us to develop a calmness and a focus which we can use then in the rest of our practice. When you're doing offerings at an altar, for example, so much comes up, and people are worried war about what comes up, and then, oh, I don't want to bow, I don't want to, subjugate myself, and who is this man? He was just a man, blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. Instead of honoring the teachings and the teacher with these offerings of sustenance, right? Things that sustain the teachings and sustain the teacher and sustain you, because you're using the basics. If you're doing kind of like a basic uh, altar offerings, you're offering water, and there's a sense to that, and there's a philosophy of that, and there's a the significance to the water, and there's a significance to the candle, and there's a significance to the flower and the incense and the food offering. And if you're in the Tibetan sense, also the water for washing, the water for drinking, the musical instruments, the even the alcohol, something to drink. All of those things are significant, and if we dismiss them, we're going to lose the 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 color and the essence and the heaviness and the substantiality of Buddhism as a practice. Okay, we don't have to be so attached to it, and that's the thing, is not to be attached to it. So if you miss out on it, fine, but know that you're missing out on it, and you've chosen to do this kind of practice to be authentic. Now, yes, you can have your own processes in this, because many times you may be alone. You may have your own home altar, which is a lovely thing, and I have videos that I've done on that. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. I'm going to be doing more discussions on this kind of stuff because it's more interesting to me, and hopefully it's more interesting to you, because I want to have a discussion and a conversation that helps people come to the Buddhist teachings without feeling like they're turning their back on religion, or that they're embracing some cult, because that's what it tends to seem like. And we also need to be mature enough not to follow every random guy on the internet. Okay, think for yourself. That's the idea. And also to follow these people who we find again and again and again and again are taking advantage of Westerners and just people in general. Either financially or sexually or physically, something like that. I mean, they're taking advantage of people, and we need to work on that. Okay, and we need to work on that as individuals and as communities and as entire. I mean, what would you call it? A religion? I mean, Buddhism as a religion in the West needs to come to terms with some things, and there's history there and there's tradition there that doesn't weave over into the Western mindset. And that's fine. And it's going to be that way. It has to be that way. Buddhism was not in China originally. It had to be brought there from India and slowly melded with things like Taoism, Confucianism, and even ancestor worship and animism that was already there. Same thing with Tibet. Look at Tibetan Buddhism as compared to like Laotian or Thai Buddhism or Sri Lankan Buddhism. I mean, these are all different cultures that kind of like wrapped it around their culture, and it worked very well. Same in Japan. Japan has Buddhism that's totally different, you know, at least on the surface. Deeper down, you find exactly the same teachings. But on the surface, you find a lot of different things that we don't see in other cultures. That's fine. It's going to be different here. Now, I remember in the past, I talked to some authors and some pretty good philosophy scholastics and academics on Buddhism, and one of the things they were laughing about was like, what is Buddhism in the West going to be like? Is it going to be monster truck rallies and big belt buckles? Well, it might be, and that's fine. So anyway, this is Reverend Sean over at the Center Path. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. I'm going to be posting a lot more. I'm doing these almost every day now, and I'm just trying to make sure that I get them edited and up. I'm working on lighting issues. I'm working on all this other kind of stuff. I've had some other ones I've done in the past. I'm trying to revamp some things. So hopefully we can have a little discussion and talk about these things, and we're going to do more stuff on the news and more stuff on current questions, especially about meditation. So this is Reverend Sean, Center Path. You guys take care, be calm, and have a nice day.